Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. The Taliban's rapid gains in Afghanistan, catching President Biden's team by surprise, according to the Secretary of State. We have reactions in the U.S., and we hear from a former UN Special Envoy for Afghanistan. The British Prime Minister saying the Taliban should not be recognized as the Afghan government. This as several Western nations send in military forces to evacuate their nationals from Afghanistan. Mexico is flying migrants down to its southern border and then telling them to walk into Guatemala. It's an effort to stem illegal immigration to the U.S. And top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer urges a federal clampdown on fake vaccination cards. These cards are shipped from overseas and are being sold across the country. The Taliban declared the war in Afghanistan over today, a day after the militant group seized the capital and Western nations scrambled to evacuate their citizens from an increasingly chaotic Kabul airport.
The Taliban declared the war in Afghanistan was over on Monday after they took control of the presidential palace in the capital, Kabul. In a video released from the Taliban in an unidentified location, Deputy Leader Mullah Baradar Akhund made their address.
We congratulate the great victory to the whole Afghan nation, especially to the people of Kabul and to our mujahideens. The way we have come through was unexpected, as we have reached the position which was never expected.
It has taken the Taliban just over a week to seize control of the country after a lightning sweep that ended in Kabul. Afghan forces, trained for years and equipped by the US at a cost of billions of dollars, faded away. On Sunday, President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, saying he wanted to avoid bloodshed. Hundreds of Afghans flooded Kabul's airport in the dark, desperate to leave on one of the last commercial flights before US forces took over air traffic control. On Monday, US officials said troops fired in the air to prevent hundreds of civilians from running on the tarmac. A Taliban leader told Reuters that the insurgents were regrouping in different provinces and would wait until foreign forces had left the country before creating a new governance structure. Many Afghans fear the Taliban will return to past harsh practices, imposing Sharia or Islamic religious law. During their rule from 1996 to 2001, women could not work, and punishments included stoning and hanging. The Taliban appears to be trying to project a moderate image in statements and to media outlets. A spokesman told the BBC that women will have access to education and work.
Leading U.S. officials caught off guard by the Taliban's rapid gains in Afghanistan. NTD's Jessica Beatty has more on the reactions in the U.S.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Sunday the administration was surprised by the speedy collapse of the Afghan security forces.
We've seen that force has been unable to defend the country, and that has happened more quickly than we anticipated.
White House officials say President Biden remained at Camp David Sunday, receiving regular briefings and meeting virtually with his national security team. Biden facing criticism from both sides of the aisle.
This is going to be a stain on this president and his presidency. They totally blew this one. They completely underestimated the strength of the Taliban.
Democrat lawmaker Vicente Gonzalez writes, the situation in Afghanistan is another shame on this administration. Withdrawal was never going to be easy, but it didn't need to come to this. Blinken defended the withdrawal, saying the U.S. has succeeded in achieving its original objective.
We were in Afghanistan for one overriding purpose. To deal with the folks who attacked us on 9/11. That's why we went there 20 years ago. And over those 20 years, we brought bin Laden to justice.
As recently as July, an ABC News Ipsos poll showed that 55% of Americans approved of Biden's handling of the troop withdrawal. On Saturday, Biden issued a statement blaming former President Trump for the collapse because he discussed a possible deal with the Taliban. But former UN Special Envoy Peter Galbraith says it isn't about Biden or Trump. He blames it on widespread corruption in Afghanistan. He says this means that U.S. aid often ended up with the Taliban.
We had the idea that there were two sides in this war. But what actually was going on the local level is the Taliban and the local officials were cooperating with each other.
He says Afghan police and soldiers were not paid for months.
As the Taliban took more and more districts and then provincial capitals, Afghan soldiers and police saw the war as lost. And so rather than risk dying, they basically ran away.
Galbraith says the strategy for the past 20 years has been a failure, but he says it doesn't mean it will significantly affect America's standing in the world. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
President Biden is set to address the situation in Afghanistan today. The Taliban has reportedly begun freeing from prison up to 7,000 of its own and al-Qaeda fighters. But all U.S. Embassy personnel in Kabul are reportedly out of the embassy and free from immediate danger. Western nations are sending military forces to Kabul to help evacuate their country's nationals from Afghanistan. This as Canada closes its embassy there and Australia works to evacuate people who have helped its effort in the country.
Plainly the situation.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he expects a new administration ruling Afghanistan soon. He's referring to the Taliban, which he says the international community should not recognize.
We don't want anybody bilaterally recognizing the Taliban. We want a united position amongst all the like-minded as far as we can get one, so that we do whatever we can to prevent Afghanistan lapsing back into being a breeding ground for terror.
The British Army's 16 Air Assault Brigade arrived in Kabul Sunday to help their nationals leave the country. Leaders of other nations expressed disappointment about the situation in Afghanistan.
We are heartbroken.
Canadian PM Justin Trudeau said he is heartbroken by the situation the Afghan people face. Canada has closed its embassy in Kabul and has stopped diplomatic operations in the country. That's while Canada evacuates Afghans who aided in their military efforts and plans to resettle over 20,000 vulnerable Afghans, such as women leaders, human rights activists, and journalists, to protect them from the Taliban. On a similar note, Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, said his country would redouble its efforts to evacuate people from Afghanistan who have helped the Australian mission there. German Chancellor Angela Merkel reportedly said Monday the country may need to evacuate as many as 10,000 people from Afghanistan. The German defense minister said military aircraft were headed to Kabul on the night of Sunday the 15th. That's to assist evacuation efforts. The country's foreign minister thanked international partners for their help with this.
That is why we are also in close exchange with the USA and other international partners and have agreed that we will provide mutual support to each other in the evacuation efforts in the coming days.
Broadly speaking, the war in Afghanistan has cost the lives of more than 2,300 U.S. soldiers and over $800 billion U.S. tax dollars from 2001 to 2019. And now, over 60 countries are calling for border crossings and airports to remain open to allow Afghans and international citizens to leave the country if they want to. Mexico says it has flown thousands of migrants to the south of the country. Their aim? To disrupt a pattern of repeat crossings at the border.
Under pressure from the U.S. government to contain illegal immigration, Mexico has been quietly flying thousands of migrants to the south of the country to expedite their departure. That's according to migrants and Mexican officials, two of whom said that Mexico has now sent roughly 13,000 people from northern cities to its southern border on about 100 flights, and that some 1,200 people were flown south in the past week alone. Figures that have not been previously reported. Video showed a flight carrying dozens of migrants, including children, landing in the southern city of Tapachula last week. Witnesses said Mexican authorities then loaded the migrants onto buses, drove them about half an hour to a remote border crossing, and instructed them to walk across the pedestrian bridge into Guatemala. Mexico's foreign ministry said in a statement it supported a humane migratory system that respected national and international law and was working with the U.S. to tackle the causes of migration. The migrant flights come as the Biden administration faces increasing criticism over its management of the issue. Apprehensions of migrants on the U.S. southern border with Mexico have surged this year, piling pressure on President Joe Biden and with it the Mexican government to stem the flow of people trying to cross the border.
A Texas border town reached a deal with the federal government to stop illegal immigrant transfers to their town. The deal ends a lawsuit that said the town does not have enough resources. The mayor of Laredo told the Monitor that illegal immigrants transferred to the border town from the Rio Grande Valley will no longer remain in Laredo. They will instead be bused to places like Austin, Dallas, and Houston. The mayor says that under the deal, the city is not required to test the individuals for the CCP virus before transporting them to other locations. He says it's because the town does not have the infrastructure to quarantine illegal immigrants if they're positive and doesn't have enough ICU beds either. The agreement comes after a lawsuit was brought by the city of Laredo in July against the Department of Homeland Security. As many cities are about to roll out the vaccine passport system, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is issuing warnings about counterfeit vaccine cards. These cards are being sold across the country. Schumer says it's illegal to buy or sell fake vaccine cards.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Sunday that the federal government needs to crack down on fake COVID-19 vaccination cards. The top Democrat spoke at a news conference in New York.
Some people are paying money for a fake card and risking prosecution because it's against the law. Who could be that dumb? Who could be that dumb? The vaccine's free, the vaccine's safe. Get the vaccine.
Schumer is pushing for Customs and Border Protection to clamp down on counterfeit cards sent from overseas. He also calls for a federal campaign to educate the public that it's against the law to sell or buy a fake card. Last week, U.S. border agents in Memphis, Tennessee announced they had seized hundreds of fabricated vaccine cards, all shipped from the Chinese city of Shenzhen. The FBI issued a joint statement in March with the Department of Health and Human Services, urging people not to buy, create, or sell fake vaccine cards. Violators will face a fine and up to 5 years in prison. Schumer's announcement comes as several cities are moving to roll out the vaccine passport system, including New York City, San Francisco, and Los Angeles.
New York's incoming Governor Kathy Hochul says that she supports masks for kids in schools. She told CNN on Sunday that she thinks it would be safest for everyone in the community.
I want to bring the best.
Incoming New York Governor Kathy Hochul said on Sunday that she supported mask mandates for children in school as a necessary safety step for helping the state get through a new wave of COVID-19 infections. Hochul said on CNN's State of the Union that masks for kids in schools was, quote, something that I believe has to occur, but added that she would remain flexible and consider all options as the circumstances change. The director of the National Institutes of Health, Francis Collins, told Fox News on Sunday that there was a, quote, very strong case for masks in schools, saying outbreaks are happening in schools where kids are not wearing face coverings, forcing them to go back to remote learning. Last week, California became the first U.S. state to require that teachers and other school staff be vaccinated or regularly tested for COVID-19, a move Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom called a, quote, responsible step. Hochul said on Sunday that she lacked the power to require that school employees be vaccinated because it was an authority only the legislature could give the governor.
More than 50 people were injured when a tour bus rolled over en route from the Hudson Valley to Niagara Falls Saturday. They were taken to 3 different central New York hospitals. New York State troopers say there was a mix of injuries from minor to serious. Investigators say the bus was the only vehicle involved in the accident. They're not sure what caused it to tip over. Thousands of California homes are in danger from the nation's largest wildfire, while other fires burn in over a dozen states. And officials warn that new blazes could ignite too. Thunderstorms that started Friday did more damage than good. Instead of dropping rain, they whipped up wind and lightning where fire crews were trying to contain the Dixie Fire. Winds of 50 miles per hour pushed flames closer to a town of about 1,500 people. The town is next to a historic community that burned down 10 days ago. Over 100 big wildfires are burning in more than a dozen western states. The U.S. Forest Service says it's in crisis mode. Firefighters are fully deployed, and its support system is maxed out. With 21,000 federal firefighters deployed, it's more than double the number that fought forest fires this time last year. The Biden administration is boosting food stamps by over 25%. It's the biggest increase in the SNAP program's history. It starts in October and applies to all 42 million food stamp recipients. Their average monthly benefit will rise from $121 to $157. The increase is part of an update to an algorithm the federal government uses to decide how much food assistance people need. Food assistance programs like SNAP make up over 2/3 of the budget at the Department of Agriculture. The news was first reported by the New York Times and then confirmed by the Agriculture Department. The U.S. Agriculture Secretary is expected to officially announce the move today. Up next, the death toll from Saturday's earthquake in Haiti doubles. Some areas in need of rescue can't be reached, and more trouble from the natural disaster is expected. And cabinet members serving Japan's prime minister visit a controversial shrine. It marks the 76th anniversary of Imperial Japan's surrender during World War II. More coming soon on NTD News.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Doctors and aid workers rushed to get flights to southwestern Haiti today ahead of a looming storm. Hospitals in the devastated area are unable to cope after casualties from a major earthquake there killed nearly 1,300 people and injured thousands more.
Hospitals have been stretched to capacity with some 5,700 more people injured. Thousands of homes and businesses have been destroyed. The 7.2 magnitude earthquake dealt a massive blow to the impoverished nation, still reeling from the assassination of its president Jovenel Moïse last month and facing a severe economic downturn compounded by the pandemic. Southwestern Haiti suffered the most extensive damage, especially the region in and around the seafront town of Lake Caille. Nearby countries have rushed to send desperately needed aid, including Mexico and the Dominican Republic. The U.S. also dispatched a 65-member search and rescue team. A breakdown of law and order cut off access to key roads in the worst hit areas, leaving parts of the island nation in the hands of gangs. Thousands of Haitians spent the weekend sleeping out in the open, despite the looming risk of heavy rains and warnings from local officials about the spread of waterborne diseases. Rescue efforts will be hampered by Tropical Storm Grace, expected to hit Haiti as early as Monday.
Malaysia's prime minister stepped down today. It comes after months of political turmoil and losing his majority, but there's no obvious successor, so his move is likely to increase instability in the country. Muhyiddin's resignation ends a tumultuous 17 months in office, the shortest stint of a Malaysian leader. But it will also likely hamper efforts to reboot an economy stricken by the global health crisis and curb a resurgence in infections. Since he took office with a slim majority in March 2020, he has been beset by coalition infighting, saying the recent crisis was brought on by his refusal of demands such as dropping graft charges against some individuals. The Southeast Asian nation's king appointed Muhyiddin as the caretaker prime minister until a new premier can be found, but did not give a timeline. King Al Sultan Abdullah ruled out elections because of the health crisis and said he would invoke his constitutional power to appoint a prime minister he believes is likely to command a majority. It was not immediately clear who could form the next government, as no lawmaker has a clear majority in parliament. Japan's prime minister renewed a commitment to his peace this weekend, marking the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II. That's as members of his cabinet visited a controversial shrine Sunday. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
Nearly 8 decades since the end of World War II, the conflict remains a source of tension between Japan and its neighbors, particularly China and North and South Korea.
We must never again repeat that devastation of war. We will continue to remain committed to this conviction under the banner of pacifism. By working together with the international community, Japan will actively do its utmost to solve various issues that the world is facing.
Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's comments were similar to those of his predecessor Shinzo Abe at last year's ceremony, and were echoed by Emperor Naruhito.
Looking back on the long period of post-war peace, reflecting on our past and bearing in mind the feelings of deep remorse, I earnestly hope that the ravages of war will never again be repeated.
Despite Emperor Naruhito's remorse over Japan's wartime past, members of Prime Minister Suga's cabinet have visited the country's controversial Yasukuni Shrine. The visits were likely to anger China and North and South Korea, as the shrine has been condemned by neighboring nations since 1985. They view it as legitimizing Japan's past military action. Former Prime Minister Abe still serves as a member of parliament. He visited Yasukuni as prime minister in 2013, sparking outrage from Beijing and Seoul, though he didn't go again as prime minister, instead sending ritual offerings. Imperial Japan brutally occupied Korea from 1910 until 1945, and parts of China from 1931 to 1945. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Swiss tennis star Roger Federer will miss the U.S. Open tournament this month because of a knee injury. In an Instagram video, Federer showed disappointment, but said it was the best decision for his career.
It's going to be difficult, of course, in some ways, but at the same time, I know it's the right thing to do because I want to be healthy. I want to be running around later as well again. And I want to give myself a glimmer of hope also to return to the tour in some shape or form.
The 40-year-old tennis player has already had 2 recent knee surgeries, which took him out of the game for more than a year. He still has hopes of beating the men's record for most Grand Slam title wins, although that won't happen this season. In June, Federer withdrew from the French Open to save himself for the grass court season. He reached the quarterfinals at Wimbledon, but lost in straight sets. He then withdrew from the Tokyo Olympics. Federer shares the men's record of 20 Grand Slam titles with Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic, who is currently #1 in the world. An exhibition of classic cars from the studio of a famous Italian designer is on display in Moscow. It's part of a year of cooperation between Italian and Russian museums. NTD's Arian Pastar has that story.
Italian vehicles spanning from the 1950s to the 2010s are on display in Moscow. The exhibition is called 100 Years of Italian Style, Cars of Nuccio Bertoni. It celebrates the Italian automotive pioneer.
Everything that Bertoni did, every project he worked on, which his designers worked on, his atelier worked on, each of these projects took automotive design a notch higher.
Bertoni's alliance with Lamborghini is a highlight. Their cars have become design and engineering legends. The Lamborghini Espada on display was one of the fastest 4-seater coupe automobiles of its time.
This is an absolute masterpiece. This car was once dubbed by journalists as a chic living room, capable of accelerating to 155 miles per hour.
Key examples of Bertoni's style include the 1954 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Sprint. There were no computers when it came out. Body models were first designed from plaster or wood.
The design negli anni 50
Design in the 1950s was not tied to production. That is, there were no technical specialists involved and so on. There was a pure design, him, his pencil, and his ideas.
The exhibition also includes drawings and photographs, from artists' impression of modern concept cars to decade-old sketches showing the design process of early models. 2021 has been declared the year of cooperation between museums in Italy and Russia.
We are very happy to bring Italian things here for demonstration, while Italians, in turn, can enjoy Russian exhibitions.
The exhibition is being held at the Special Purpose Garage Museum. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.